Let's talk Tanya for the 13th of Tishrei. Today we start chapter 21 of Akeidah, a letter on the topic of tzedakah. There are quite a few letters on the topic of tzedakah in Akeidah, and the reason for this, we've explained in the past, is because the Alter Rebbe had undertaken upon himself the responsibility of supporting a group of several hundred families of Chassidim who had emigrated to the Holy Land, to Eretz Yisrael. And once a year, the Alter Rebbe would write a letter urging his Chassidim to donate towards this fund. And the way it worked was that every Chassid, actually, there was a certain amount that he was assessed for, how much he had to give annually to support this fund. And once a year, there was a messenger that would go from the Alter Rebbe and would visit the different Chassidic communities and collect the money from the Gabbai Tzedakah. In every community, there was one person who was in charge of collecting the Tzedakah from the members of that community. And the messenger from the Alter Rebbe would collect the funds from every single city. Now, what happened was that people had to give a certain amount of money every single year. And as is human nature, they would procrastinate. And at the last minute, when the messenger from the Alter Rebbe came to town and the Gabbai Tzedakah, the one who was in charge of the fund in the city, would be running around from person to person trying to collect the money. And a lot of times the people didn't have the money because they had spent it on other things. So they had to scramble to get the money. And it created difficulty. So the Alter Rebbe asked was that Chassidim should make a payment plan and that divide the amount that they had to give annually into weekly payments, or at the very least monthly payments, and once a week or once a month to go and to give that payment to the Gabbai Tzedakah in the city, to the person in charge of the fund in the city. And this way, when the messenger came from the Alter Rebbe, all the money would be ready to go. In this letter, the Alter Rebbe is encouraging the Chassidim to follow this payment plan, not to procrastinate and to give the money every week or every month. But in this letter here, the Alter Rebbe is not focusing on the practical reasons for that, which we just explained, because otherwise it's difficult to collect the money. But the Alter Rebbe is going to give two spiritual reasons why it is important to actually give the money not once a year, but weekly or monthly. The first reason we're going to learn today, and the second reason, God willing, tomorrow. So to understand the first reason, the Alter Rebbe first talks about the Akeidah. The Akeidah, which was the test, we know when Hashem told Avram Avinu, our patriarch Avraham, to take his son Yitzchak and to sacrifice him. And we know that this is huge. We know every single morning in davening, we talk about it. We say the whole parsha, the whole passage in the Torah that talks about it. On Rosh Hashanah, we mention the Akeidah on numerous occasions. And we know that our sages tell us that the merit of the Akeidah, the merit of Avram passing this test, stands in our good stead for all generations. So obviously the Akeidah is something huge. But the question is, why is the Akeidah so huge? So Avram was willing to sacrifice his son. Yes, I'm not saying that that's not easy, but after all, throughout our history, there are many, many people, millions of Jews who have sacrificed their lives for God. There are also people who sacrifice their children. We have the famous story in Hanukkah about Hannah and her 7 sons, and how she, all her 7 sons gave up their lives rather than to bow down to an idol at her encouragement. And she herself made the statement, Avram, you brought one child as a sacrifice. I brought 7. So what is so great about what Avram did? It had been repeated historically many times. Moreover, the Alter Rebbe says, all the people throughout history, the Jewish people who sacrificed themselves or their children, they weren't commanded to do so directly by God. Avram Avinu, God appeared to him and said, please sacrifice your son. So did he really have much of an option? And one final point, which is we know that a test, whenever we talk about a test is everything is relative to a person. For example, for one person, not to keep Shabbos is a big test because for whatever reason, maybe they didn't grow up in a religious environment, or for any other reason. And for another person, it's not a test at all. And obviously, the greater the spiritual stature of an individual, the more difficult a test has to be in order to be considered actually a test. Avram Avinu was the ultimate spiritual person. God appears to him and says, please sacrifice your son. Is it really a test? Did he really have a choice? Why is that considered to be something which is so great? And the Alter Rebbe says something amazing over here. The Alter Rebbe says, the fact that Avram Avinu took his son to sacrifice him, not a big deal. And that's not why here we are, some 4,000 years later, still talking about the greatness of it, or why God still remembers it. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was Avram Avinu's Zerizus. Zerizus translates as swiftness, but it's not only about a physical swiftness. Zerizus is a swiftness that comes from passion, enthusiasm, excitement, which causes you to be swift and to run. God told Avraham Avinu to sacrifice his son. The next morning, Vayashkem Avraham Baboiker, Avraham Avinu, he wakes up at the crack of dawn. And what does he do? He saddles his donkey. Avraham Avinu had many servants. He's so excited about doing this mitzvah. He's so excited about fulfilling the will of his creator that he himself saddles his donkey. He goes and he chops the wood by himself. That's what was amazing, was Avraham Avinu's Zerizus. Despite the pain that Avraham Avinu was certainly feeling over the fact that he had to sacrifice his son. And remember, Avraham Avinu was the paragon of kindness, of love. Can imagine how much he loved his only child. And yet, to serve Hashem, he displayed this incredible Zerizus, this incredible swiftness, this excitement. And that's what 4,000 years later is still standing in our good stead. It is the Zerizus of Avraham Avinu. That is what is so special. And Alter Rebbe is turning to Chassidim and saying, yeah, theoretically, technically, you can wait till the end of the year and bring the money to the one who's in charge of the fund. But where's this Zerizus? Zerizus means I have the money now, I run to him and I give the money now for tzedakah. On a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, pushing it off till the end of the year is a lack of Zerizus, and from Avraham Avinu we see just how important this Zerizus is. That's one reason Alter Rebbe gives for why the Chassidim should not procrastinate and delay till the end, but make a payment plan and give every week or every month, and tomorrow we will learn the second reason.